Hello, West Ham Network. It's Holly, and today I'm going to be running through 5 things that I think we should include in our approach to the Arsenal game. As always, leave us a comment with what you think we should do to sort out our performances ahead of the Arsenal game. If you're new around here, make sure you hit that subscribe button as well so you never have to miss an update. Before you just say that the solution is to sack Moyes, we have around 24 hours now until kickoff, so there probably isn't realistically time for that. So I'm going to be trying to put forward 5 different things that I just want to see us implement next game as a bare minimum. So as we know, our form has been questioned for a while. It's been a tough couple of weeks. After what was a pretty positive start to the season, things were actually looking quite good. I think a lot of us were pleasantly surprised at how we were doing. The worry is that if we don't now stop the rot, that we are going to have basically wasted all of the good work that we did at the beginning of the season. So where do we begin? The Everton game obviously highlighted a team that was lacking confidence and urgency, as well as a lack of tactical changes when we struggled. And I know that a turning point for a lot of people was obviously bringing on Ings when we needed to find a goal from somewhere. And a goal from him did not seem possible, to say the least. Now, ultimately, we made a very average Everton side look decent. And what worried me was that Moyes tried a lot. He shuffled people around. He had Paqueta on the left. He had him up front. He brought Ings on, but none of that was effective. And if anything, we weakened our side with most of the moves that we made. And strategically, that is not a good sign. We want to be finding a winning formula rather than sort of struggling to find a half decent formula at the moment. So now is the time for us to start working out what works better than what we currently have. That's what we need to start with, and then stick to it so we can actually start building again and working out what works well for us. So here are 5 things that I think we should do in the approach to the Arsenal game. But as always, let us know your thoughts in the comments. I know we've all got very different opinions, and that's a good thing. That's what I want to hear. I'm genuinely interested to hear your thoughts on all of the above. So let me know what you think. So first one, bit of a no-brainer, but I want us to play our strongest 11. I've seen some people saying that we should put our youngsters out so we drop out the League Cup and we can focus on the League and Europe. Now, it wouldn't be the craziest idea, but for me, we need to use this game to start working out what works best and use it as more of a trial run so that we can stop this rot. In a similar way to how you choose a pre-season game, we don't currently have the winning formula. So for me, it just seems silly to not at least try and find a winning formula in this game where perhaps the stakes aren't as high and see what we can do. And as much as some people are saying that they don't care about this result, there's no way that if we get battered 8-0 by Arsenal on Wednesday, it's not going to absolutely destroy the morale of fans and players alike. So one of the players that we need to use, in my opinion, I've said it before, I'll say it again, it's Mabama. We all know about Mabama. We've seen the news, obviously, where he has turned down a new contract. For a player wanting to sign, we need to show intent that we are going to play them and give them some sort of a future at the club. So if we can give him some game time, ideally starting him against Arsenal, it's likely to help the negotiations for the contract renewal. I can't say I'm disappointed in him for not accepting the first contract because we've had so many opportunities to give him a run out and test what he can do. And obviously, we choose to play the likes of Ings and Antonio over him instead. We even play people that aren't strikers in the striker position. So I'm sure he's feeling at his wit's end in terms of what more he can actually do to get a chance. His stats are good. His form was good. He now has been not really getting much game time as well. So it's not ideal for him. And there aren't many ambitious and successful players on the planet that would be happy to tie themselves down to basically being a bench warmer. So I understand why he's at least negotiating a fair amount with the club. The only concern I do have with Mabama starting against Arsenal is, as I said, he hasn't actually played much recently because we've kind of called him up to the first team and then not used him. So he might struggle to either hit the ground running, which would have a terrible impact on his confidence, would be my fear. How ready he is to step into a difficult game, I don't know, but I am keen to see. And I think we've got very little to lose now. Then worst case, if he really struggles or he doesn't have the match fitness for the full 90, whatever it is, we can sub him off worst case at some point for Antonio. And at least we've tried something new. So let me know in the comments as well if you'd start Mabama or whether you'd bring him on as a sub. Personally, I'm just keen to see him get as much game time as possible because I don't think 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes is enough for a player to sort of hit the ground running and find their form. And yeah, clearly he needs game time, and that will play a big part in us actually being able to convince him to stay with us. Now, Playing Paqueta and Alvarez, after looking into the very confusing yellow card ban rules, it appears that Paqueta and Alvarez will be banned for the next Premier League game, meaning we may as well utilise them tomorrow. They bring a lot to our side, so that's a bit of a no-brainer. Then, up next, urgency. So we looked very relaxed, painfully relaxed on the ball at times against Everton, to the point where some of our passes barely made it to the next player. Now, shorter, sharper passes are going to be essential, especially against a team like Arsenal. And if we lose the ball as a result of trying something like this, I would rather take that risk, because otherwise we're just predictable. We invite pressure on. And by the time we're receiving the ball, we've got players on us because we've basically trickled it along to the next player. Now, this one here, transitioning faster, is actually the biggest one for me. So we need to transition faster from defence to attack. In our last game, we spent so long passing the ball around at the back that we allowed Everton to first of all get back into position when we could have attacked. And then they also had time to come and close us down, which put the pressure back on us when we could have attacked. And personally, I think this is where half of our problems against Everton stemmed from, because we just had nothing in attack, because by that point, everyone was man-marked and our only options were to pass sideways or backwards. Now, we've seen that we play better on the break, and that's because we break quickly. So it's confusing me as to why we can't just pass the ball quickly through the lines when we have a more possession-based game. We just need someone to have the oomph to be like, right, let's go. We don't need to play slow football just because we have the ball. You look at some of the best teams in the Premier League, they play quick football regardless of whether they've got 90% of possession or 20%. That obviously does also require us to move more off the ball, which was something we didn't do enough of against Everton. There were times where people did make good runs and we didn't spot them, so we wasted them. And then there were times where there could have been a good run, but we just stayed behind a player and didn't really make the effort to get into position where we could break quickly. So it made it a lot easier for us to just knock it around at the back until basically they knew what we were going to do. So on the bright side, it's unlikely that we are going to have, didn't think I'd be saying this is a great thing, it's unlikely we're going to have a lot of possession against Arsenal, but I want us to have that urgency and move off the ball so that we can actually play at the same speed as a counter-attack, which is not impossible, but we could do this when we're actually holding some possession. Now, this is something that we've got to fix, because we can't just be dropping points every single game where we seem to have more of the ball. Anywhere over about 40% possession seems to be where we suddenly struggle, because we just don't know what to do. And that seems a ridiculous problem to have, because when you look at most teams in the world, possession is quite closely linked with opportunities, and we are just not creating opportunities from it, whether it's delivery into the box. Like, again, the last game, we would just, even when we did get into a crossing position, we cut back and cut back and cut back until they just took the ball back off us. So we just need to take some chances, get the ball into the box, but transition faster and make it scary for the opposition, because I thought that in the last game, they were going to be worried about us and maybe sit back and defend their 1-0 lead. They had the balls to come and attack us because we weren't doing anything even when we were behind. So again, I think a lot of this comes down to confidence, and players are so worried about losing possession that they would rather currently play backwards or sideways. But this is where our tactics need to change, and we need to take some risks, and we need to play a more positive style of football. And then the fifth thing, Emerson return. So it would be good to see Emerson playing if he's fit again. He's been linking up so well with Paqueta on that side, and this was visible as well against Everton. Cresswell filled in last game and he split opinion. I actually thought he played really well, especially for someone who has had so little game time. That was our option in that position, and some of his 1-2s were actually probably the fastest football and like give and go that we actually saw for a lot of the game. But we massively missed the link up with Paqueta and Emerson. We know that they play well together and that they're a real threat on that side. So there we have it. There we have it. Those are the 5 main things that I think we can do to make a quick difference before the Arsenal game. But essentially, we need an entire shift in mentality from management down to individual performances. And I actually had a proper debate on Twitter, or X, where the blame basically lies for the current performances and the challenges that we're facing. And it was definitely at a time where emotions were heightened straight after the game. So there was some abuse being hurled my way, but it's actually interesting to hear people's different opinions. And this is what I want you to comment about, by the way, because I genuinely want to hear how much of the blame you think lies with Moyes, strategy, things like that, and then how much also lies with the players. Because I'm one where I think a lot of it obviously ultimately comes down to the manager. But I don't think that players are completely blameless when they are messing up very simple things like passes. So yeah, ultimately, my opinion is that managers are responsible for overall performances, tactics, substitutions, boosting team morale, making sure that you've got a proper unit that feels connected. But then players also need to be responsible for playing to a high standard, from cutting out sloppy passes to closing down, and the likes of Zuma, for example, hyping up the team when times are difficult, which I didn't spot when we were struggling in the Everton game. So I feel like it's a proper combination of everybody needing to step their ideas up now and pull in the same direction and just take responsibility for everything that they can. It's very easy, I think, when a team is struggling to point fingers and say like, oh, this is on the manager, and then all the players drop their performances. I've said it before, we see it in teams like Watford, where it's obviously a lot easier to sack a manager. Not that I'm saying Moyes should be staying at this point, but I think when you get in the mentality that the manager is the only problem, the players kind of step back and go, well, there's no point in us kind of trying to change anything ourselves. And I don't want that to happen either. We've got a lot of very talented players. So the fact that passes were trickling, people weren't moving into space, there were definitely simple things that the players can improve on. And yeah, a lot of it does come down to the tactics, which I think we need to change. We need to be more positive. We need to be more proactive. We need to make sure that we're actually bringing it to teams and not playing such a defensive, negative style of football at times. But it has also worked against some teams, and it's got to be changed game by game. I don't think we can take the same approach to every single team in the league. So there's my very, very long rant. But yeah, the 5 things that I would like to see us change ahead of the Arsenal game, with the very little time that we've got. We need to play our strongest 11, Paqueta and Alvarez, urgency, faster transitions, and Emerson returning would obviously be a positive. Don't know if he'll be able to play yet. Not really sure. But yeah, that's all from me for now. But drop us a comment and let us know how you'd like to see us approach the Arsenal game. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a little thumbs up so that we know. And here's hoping we can start to turn things around. We're still sitting, although despite all the stress that's currently going on at the club, we are sitting 9th in the Premier League. We're in the League Cup and we're in Europa League. So all is not lost and there is still everything to play for. Thank you very much, as always, for watching. And until next time, come on, you Irons.